Greetings to the free world known to man. Back at you all again. Wanted to talk to you good people about psychology. Now, we want to lead off this with, we're not the smartest man in the world. We don't have a degree or anything crazy like that. But we have what's called a vocabulary. See, psychology is heavily rooted in the ideal of norms and deviants. And then some people came up with this brilliant idea of how to set up biases. Because basically biases are, in layman's terms, extenuating circumstances. You know, something that doesn't really apply to the norm because of the situation being a little bit different, which has an alternate outcome. Now, in that lane, a bias sets up that different outcome, which would be a deviant. Which means, because it's not the norm. You know, it's like this. Here. Let's say you have 100 people and you give a quiz to these 100 people. And on question 1, you say, to fill in a gap in a conversation, would you say blah, blah, blah or rah, rah, rah? Now, out of the 100 people, you have 98 people that answer blah, blah, blah. And you have 2 people that answered rah, rah, rah. Second question. Fill in a gap. Which would you select? This, that, and the third, or X, Y, and Z? Out of those 100, 96 people say the first choice. 4 people pick the second choice. Now, when you take those 2 groups of questions and lay them side by side, and you compare the answers of the first group to the second group, you find, and forgive us because we're not really quick with statistics and whatnot, you find that the norm of picking answer 1 on both questions is, say, 97%, and the deviant is the 2%. Now, you could go and break it down and find out why the people chose answer 1 both times, whether it's an ethnic or religious, a sociological, socioeconomical, whatever reasons. You can go ahead and apply those biases, but then that further dilutes the ideal of what norm is, because you're dealing with all these different norms, but trying to apply the same type of logic across the board. See, we bring this up because in psychology, which is a science, we're gonna, you know what I mean? Science, a science developed by the European norms, the global, worldwide. Here, let's back up. Everyone knows in early Americans, when you look at, you know, your currency, the bill, you know, Constitution being drawn up, men were wearing wigs, stockings, and these friendly little whatevers, look like Prince basically, but with a wig on. And that was the norm. That set the standard globally, because it wasn't just in America, because America got that from Britain, and Britain, France, Germany, everybody was doing that, because that set the standard. You fast forward to 2000 whatever, and you see politicians, lawyers and such, they're all suits and ties, right? That's the norm, and it's a global standard. It's the same thing when you go to the European countries, you go to Japan, you go to China. These people that are conducting business based on the baseline of what normally is, they dressed as such. Now, you know, you have pockets of the world where people are wearing traditional things like, you know, Africa, the Middle East, and in those countries, they have so many resources that people will accept their business with them dressed that way because they have big bank. So when we get fast forward back to the point, is normal isn't normal and psychology isn't real. It's something that white people made up to explain people that don't act like white people. Whenever you see, there was a study back in the day about how black students did horribly at the ACT, SATs or whatnot. And someone came backdoored it with an independent study to find out why. And they learned that it was the way that the questions were worded. It was more confusing to blacks because it was based on a standardized set of rules, a norm for white people. The way they talk, the way they act. And this was, you know, like a couple decades after segregation or what have you, where, you know, black families weren't all the way up on receiving the same level of education as whites. And we don't say that to confuse anyone, because the thing is that when the tests were reworded into a general way that everyone could understand, blacks started excelling. And that had nothing to do with affirmative action, which everybody likes to go on about being a fucking, like, never mind, we don't get into that. So, deviance is just something that says you're not normal. And what normal is in this modern world on a global level is what white people say. Doubt it? See how many white people say, well, you know, if you don't break the law, you don't have to worry about cops shooting you. When we all know that, well, we should all know that that's not true now. But their normal ideal is that when a cop stops them, he's like, hello, sir or ma'am. How are you doing today? Could I see your license and registration, please? Blah, 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 blah. This really cordial interaction. And their life is never in danger unless they actually try to attack the police officer. We said it before, that when we see a story, about a white person being shot by the police and killed, he had it coming. And again, not based on him being a bad person or based on his skin color, but based on the fact that he must have, well, no, he had like the police chief's daughter locked in the basement, feeding her like through a bucket and making her lather herself up with lotion, and if not, she got the hose. That's when white people get shot. Black people, just like right now, walking down the street looking like we're talking to ourselves, someone will be like, oh, he was crazy and then he attacked me and we shot him. We could die like walking down the street in our neighborhood trying to record these videos and sharing them with the masses. Let that sink in.